Hello everyone, it is again Amit Ghai, who your black belt coach and mentor. Today I am going to cover a few things about the Six Sigma foundations. So this is the objective for today's video. Number one, we will understand the history of Lean and Six Sigma. Then we will see that what are the underlying principles of Six Sigma to reduce the variation in the industry. Then we will also talk about the roles and responsibility of a DMAC project participants, and finally we will look into the interrelationship between Lean and Six Sigma. If you look at the history of Six Sigma, it started with Motorola in 1986. Then it was in development stage for around a decade for then. During 1995, it came into the mainstream, and for next 10 years the industry adopted it. By 2017, the Six Sigma was talk of the town for all of the industry. On the other hand, the history of the Lean is much older than that. It started with 1913 with the mass production of the Ford car manufacturing factory in US. It was in development stage for quite a long time. Then later on, Toyota adapted it in Japan when after the World War II they had the scarcity of resources, but they wanted to manufacture the car with a lot of quality and productivity. They further converted it into the Toyota Production System, or TPN. In 2009 around, it came into the mainstream and adopted in the industry. So today they both are linked and used together. We'll see that how. Sigma is a Greek letter that is the measurement of variation. When we measure the standard deviation, the sigma is a measurement scale upon which we can measure the improvements. So statistically defining, the sigma is the measurement of variation. On the other hand, when we talk about Six Sigma, it is an overall methodology supported by DMAC, define, measure, analyze, improve and control, that gives a statistical as well as the project management tool to resolve the business problems. Look at this. Which of these two pilots you would like to basically opt for? The pilot A, that is not very consistent in landing balloon to the defined target X, whereas we have the pilot B, he is more consistent and most of the time it is near to the target. Of course you would like to go with pilot B. Let us see what is Six Sigma metric. It is all about variation. Look at the scenario. How many of the standard deviations are covering within the upper and lower control limits? Here if you look at the scenario number A, only the 3 standard deviations are covered between the lower and upper specification limits, and there is a good chance of creating the defects that is marked as red here. Whereas in the scenario number 2, if you see, the 6 standard deviations are covered within the lower and upper specification limits, and in this case the chances of making the defect is very low. Let us first look what is the difference between a traditional approach of problem solving versus a Six Sigma approach of problem solving. Here you would see that in a practical, in a non Six Sigma or traditional approach, there are chances of making more failure in the processes, because if you look at a traditional approach, we always have a practical problem and we convert the solution into a practical solution. For example, if you have fever, you just take the paracetamol, and probably after taking 1 paracetamol or 2 paracetamol you would say that my fever has disappeared. But what if this problem is consistent? It means for next 2 to 3 days you are getting the fever again and again. In that case you will use a kind of the statistical testing. So your doctor actually prescribes you some test, your blood test, urine test. So basically what we try to do is we convert the reason of your fever into some measurable parameters like level of infection, level of various other parameters. Those are out of control. So basically what we have done, we have converted your fever into a statistical problem within the numbers saying that we have fever, and then we find the statistical solution. Here the doctor defines that what is the level of antibiotics, how many doses you need, and then they give you the simple prescription. So what we have done in Six Sigma methodology, we have converted a practical problem into statistical problem, converted it into the statistical solution, and converted finally it into the practical solutions. There are 10 Six Sigma principles. The principle of market. It means whenever you are taking an initiative, the customer comes first. You should be having customer in mind while solving the problems. Six Sigma is a data driven approach. It does not go with the assumptions. You should have the data behind any problem statement, for how long the problem is there, what is the severity of the problem. The Pareto principle, as most of you would be aware, it talks about 80-20 rule. It is said that 80% of the problems are caused by 20% of the problems. So we do not focus of elimination of 100% of the problem in one go, but we focus on removing the 80% of the problem that are related to 20% of the causes only. Variation is evil. We should have the consistent output. The customer sees the variation first in your performance and then the out of control parameters. So Six Sigma basically tries to reduce the variation in your processes. Stability is important. Once you have achieved the outcome, it should be stable. It should be sustainable as well for the long term. Experiment is the key. You try the various solutions during your improve phase through the pilot run, and if they are going fine, then you go ahead and implement that in the production. Statistics and probability. It works on the statistical parameter. The core of the Six Sigma is hypothesis testing, through which by data driven approaches we validate our assumptions. 6S or Six Sigma is a team sport. We need to be mindful that the people those are doing the operations are the best one to suggest you the solutions also. We always need to involve them. Sustainability, as I talked earlier, whatever solutions we have implemented in our processes, we need to make sure that they are sustainable for the long term. And then Six Sigma requires a lot of project management skill. Talk about how does the Six Sigma team looks like. So the role of a sponsor in a Six Sigma project is the high level executive of the company who ensures the project selection aligns with the strategic goal of the organization. It ensures the business selects the right candidates for it, and it ensures the adequate resources are provided. On the other hand, the project champion is the one with whom you would work very closely throughout the execution, because the project champion is the one who develops the project team charter with BB or GB candidate or the team leader. Also, the champion is the one who regularly reviews and tracks the progress of the project, because he or she is the responsible or accountable person for overall success of your project. The role of Green Belt is to lead the improvement project, ensure active involvement of all the team members, assuring application of appropriate Six Sigma tools and methodology, working with champion to refine the project charter and lead the application of Six Sigma tools. The role of the team member in your project would be to attend the team meetings and provide all the necessary data support, testing and trying of the solutions that you have selected, and finally implementing them into the production. In some of the project you will also need financial analyst. This will be the guy from the finance team of your company who will support you to identify and quantify the business benefit of your projects. So the questions that you need to ask yourself is, if you plan to complete a project, who would be the best fit in these roles of your project champion? And second, who would be the appropriate sponsors?